Which is better, the Samsung Galaxy A15 4G LTE or the Samsung Galaxy A14 4G LTE? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my comparison of the Samsung Galaxy A15 4G LTE versus the Samsung Galaxy A14 4G LTE. Now, hence the names of these phones, the A15 is the successor to last year's A14, and going from one generation to another, there's quite a few improvements and also quite a few similarities. And I'm looking forward to showing you all of those in this video. Now, one difference for these two devices is that for the A15, the box can stand up on its own, but then for the A14, the box cannot stand up on its own. But all jokes aside, I'm really looking forward to showing you everything there is to know about these two devices. Now, to clear up any potential confusion, there are also 5G versions of these phones. So there's the A15 5G and A14 5G. Now, the official names of these phones are the Galaxy A15 and Galaxy A14, but I did put 4G LTE up in the title just to clear up any potential confusion. Now, the first difference between these two phones, and this is a pretty big difference, are the displays. So with the A14, we do have a slightly larger 6.6-inch display compared to a smaller 6.5-inch display with the A15. However, the actual display technology is very different. So with the A15, we're getting a Super AMOLED display running at 90 Hz. And then for the A14, we're getting a PLS LCD display, and it is running at 60 Hz. So we have a faster refresh rate here with the A15. We're also getting better display technology with it being Super AMOLED, and you can probably tell side by side. Colors are way bolder, way richer with the A15 in comparison to the A14. And then also you're getting better viewing angles as well compared to PLS LCD. Now, both of these phones do have 1080p displays, so that is nice, so things are very crisp and clear on both. You can see with that refresh rate difference, the A15 is definitely way smoother compared to the A14. And because of that, it really does make it feel like a way more premium device. Now with the Galaxy A15, we have a 19.5:9 aspect ratio compared to a 20:9 aspect ratio with the A14. Now typically, I do actually prefer 20:9 compared to 19.5:9. So I suppose when it comes to that, the A15 is a bit of a downgrade. And then with the A15, we have an 84.3% screen to body ratio compared to an 80.2% screen to body ratio with the A14. And then you probably already noticed the notches are slightly different in shape. So it really comes down to personal preference, but the notch is a little bit more streamlined here with the A14 compared to the A15. And then both phones do have 13 megapixel front-facing cameras located in those notches. So even though the display with the A14 is slightly bigger and the notch is slightly smaller, the display is way better quality here with the A15. Now moving on to internal storage, it really depends on the version of the phone that you're getting. But for the A15, this device is offered in 128 gigs of storage, which is this one right here. And then the A14 does come in 64 gigs, but this version is 128 gigs as well. And then both of these phones are compatible with microSD card expansion. Now, I definitely feel like 128 gigs is kind of the bare minimum. 64 gigs is definitely the minimum in 2024, but I recommend that most people go for 128 gigabytes because apps are getting bigger and bigger, services are taking up more and more space in your devices, and people are taking more photos and videos now than ever before. And having a lot of extra internal space definitely comes in handy in that situation. Now, there's no wireless charging with either of these two devices, but they do both feature fingerprint sensors on the power buttons. So let's first give this a try with the A15. There we go. And we'll try it one more time. There we go. And then we'll try it out here with the A14. There we go, very fast. We'll try that one more time. And it seems like with the two phones, they're about equally as fast, and the fingerprint sensors have kind of equal levels of accuracy. It's not like between the two I noticed any huge differences or anything like that. So I am glad that it at least works well here with both devices. It's not like one fingerprint sensor is terrible and the other is fantastic. They're both actually very good. And then both phones do support Face Unlock, so I do appreciate that we have multiple methods for accessing the devices. Now, taking a look at the cameras in the back of these phones, they're actually very similar as far as the amount of megapixels we're getting. So both phones have 50 megapixel main cameras, 5 megapixel ultra wide angle cameras, and 2 megapixel macro cameras for close-up images. Now here's how things look on the camera apps in both devices. This is with the main rear camera right now. So even though these phones can capture images in 50 megapixels, by default it actually captures them at 12 megapixels. But you can go up here and make that switch to 50 right there, and then also 50 right here. And then I'm going to take a picture of this plant and we'll compare the results. So there we go. And then I'll take a photo with the A14 4G LTE. And then here are the results that I got from the two cameras. Now for the A14, I did already have the watermark enabled. That is optional in both phones. But you can definitely see a difference here. So colors are way better with the A15 compared to the A14. However, it does seem like things are a little bit cleaner with the A14, if that makes sense. So I'm really curious to know what you think. Would you rather have better colors or sharper images? Because this image actually looks surprisingly good on the A14 in comparison to the A15. It just seems like there's a bit more distortion and various issues like that with the A15 in comparison. And then from there with both of these devices, there's an option here for 0.5. And then if you go there, it's going to put the cameras in ultra wide mode. And then you can capture a lot more content in a single frame here. Then from there, we can go over to portrait mode to get those nice blurred out backgrounds. So both phones have that. We can also head over to the More tab on both devices and access the macro cameras. And then with macro, you can get very close up here. So that is a nice feature in certain situations. I can't say it's something that I find myself using all the time, but I am glad it's at least there. And then flip around to the front-facing cameras on these devices. You can take standard selfies. You can also take group selfies, so it crops out a little bit. And then there's also portrait selfies. So you can take photos in portrait mode with the front-facing cameras in both devices. So definitely nice that we're getting so many different camera features with both of these phones, despite them being very low end. And maybe you'll find yourself using, for example, the ultra wide camera a lot or the macro camera a lot. Then maybe for your next phone, you'd want to go for a phone that has even better cameras that offer those same features. So I am glad that we're getting almost like a preview here of these various features, maybe not in their best implementation, but we're at least still getting all these various camera features with these phones. But the biggest difference between these two devices definitely has to be the performance, and that all comes from the processor. So with the A14, I'll be honest, this phone is really slow. Like, I probably wouldn't recommend that really anyone use this phone unless it's kind of your last option out there. It's very slow. But for the A15, it's really a whole different situation here. This phone is a lot faster, way smoother too, and just feels like a more usable device. And that's also the case when it comes to actual usage of this phone. Now this model of the A15 does have 6 gigabytes of RAM. I think there are other models that have 4, I'm not completely sure. And then with this model of the A14, this has 4 gigabytes of RAM. But I also believe there's certain models of this phone that have 6 gigabytes of RAM. So when you are looking to buy either of these two phones, definitely double check how much RAM the version of the phone you're buying has, because it can be different, and that also might be different based on the region that you're in. But the processors here, with the A15, we're getting the MediaTek Helio G99, and then with the Galaxy A14, we're getting either the Samsung Exynos 850, which is this one, or it comes with the MediaTek Helio G80, which again is different based on the region that you're in. Now I did run a benchmark test using Geekbench 6, and here are the scores that I got from that test. So you can see here with the A15, the scores are way higher than the A14. It's almost amazing that this is going from one generation to another. I mean, this is a huge difference here. The multi-core score is literally double, and then the single-core score is significantly higher, more than double for that matter. So I'm just going to let these scores speak for themselves. And keep in mind, I've updated both phones to the newest versions of One UI 6, so you can see they also both have Android 14 running. But you can see there's a massive difference in performance. So I feel like this pretty much explains everything. Honestly, if you can find an A15 for close to the same price as an A14, definitely go for the A15. And then if you're curious, video recording with these two phones does max out at 1080p for both the front and rear cameras. And then both phones do have very large 5,000 milliamp hour internal batteries. However, with the A15, we're getting up to 25 watt fast charging compared to the A14, where it maxes out at 15 watt fast charging. Now keep in mind, to get either of those charging speeds, you are going to have to use a wall adapter that is compatible with that speed of charging, but the fact that you can recharge the A15 way faster than the A14 is definitely a nice selling point as well. Now taking a closer look at the hardware of these two phones, well, there are many similarities, such as the look of the camera modules here. They're also very different. So the first difference you probably noticed are the materials in the back of the devices. With the A14, we're getting this kind of grooved matte finish here that is kind of shiny. And then with the A15, we're getting a glossy finish that's very colorful. So this is really interesting. I really like this look. It's very unique. I would definitely pair up either of these two phones for that matter with a clear plastic case, just so you can see the actual color of the devices through that case. And I would also recommend actually getting a case because both of these phones are made out of plastic, and plastic definitely scratches way faster than any other material out there. And then another difference too is that the A15 is a bit boxier compared to the A14. I definitely think it has a more premium appearance to it. But on the left side of both phones, we have the slot for the microSD card and SIM card. On the right side of both phones, we have the volume up, volume down, and the fingerprint sensors, which are also the power buttons. You can also see there's this like little groove kind of with the A15 compared to the A14 where it's pretty much the same going through the whole side of the phone. And then up top here, we have the noise canceling microphones. And then on the bottom, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and with the speakers in both phones. And then on the back, both devices have that triple camera setup, flash, and Samsung logos. But in conclusion, I think it's pretty clear which phone is the winner of the two. We're getting significant upgrades here with the A15 over the A14. And really, it's hard to recommend getting an A14 at all at this point, just because of how many improvements we've gotten going from one generation to another. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, definitely give it a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, coming at you with my comparison of the Samsung Galaxy A15 4G LTE versus the Samsung Galaxy A14 4G LTE. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.